Hi everyone! Have you always wanted to grow watermelon but didn't think you could because you don't have the space? Well, today I'm going to share with you how to grow watermelon vertically in your garden beds and in containers by growing up, not out, and save yourself a ton of space in your garden. Let's jump in. Now we're going to be planting this little watermelon transplant right at the base of this trellis behind me here today. The first tip to growing lots of watermelon is to plant it in the right weather. Watermelon is a warm weather fruit. It absolutely loves warm temperatures. It grows best at temperatures between 75 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. If it dips much below 60 degrees at night, that's really too cold for watermelon. So plant it outside in the summertime after your last frost date when the temperature is nice and warm, and your watermelon will absolutely thrive. I started these little transplants from seed indoors about a month ago, and we're also going to plant seeds right in the garden beds. And the reason why this helps you grow lots of watermelon is because you'll have watermelon ready to harvest at different times, which spreads your harvest apart. And also, you never want to depend on just one plant. You always want to plant those backups, so seeds will give us backups in case something happens to our original plant. So let's get planting these right in this garden bed. Now, watermelon does take up a lot of space, so even when you plant at the base of a trellis, you want to remove any of the old plants that you have growing here. So I'm just going to remove some of the peas, which are actually dying off in the heat, and the nasturtiums, which are definitely fading in the heat, so I have plenty of room for my watermelon. Just clip these out, and then we'll prepare our garden beds, because watermelon is a really heavy feeder, which means that it needs lots of nutrients. The third tip to growing lots of watermelon is to add good organic matter to the soil. So first of all, I've already loosened up my garden bed here. It's nice loose soil, and we're going to add some compost to help fertilize my watermelon. So you can see my soil is nice and loose here. So my watermelon roots have good room to grow. Watermelon roots are quite large and go down very, very deep. So it's a good idea to loosen your soil and give a lot of room for those roots. But I am going to go ahead and add some more compost right where I'm going to be planting. Add a couple inches of compost here to the area where we're going to plant. Now make sure you plant watermelon in nice warm soil. You're not going to want to plant it out in your garden until 2 weeks after your last frost date. So here I'm going to dig a couple of holes at the base of my trellis. And when you're growing watermelon vertically, it's a good idea to grow smaller, more compact varieties. These are the Sugar Baby watermelon from my melon seed collection, and they mature in about 60 to 90 days. And this trellis will be nice and sturdy and strong to hold up a more compact variety like the Sugar Baby. The Sugar Baby is a nice, small, personal size watermelon. It grows to about 8 to 10 pounds, so it really works well for trellising when you're growing a smaller variety like that. And the Sugar Baby's in my melon seed collection. So we're just going to plant this little transplant right at the base of the trellis. So I'm going to dig a little hole for it, and I'm going to add a handful of vermistera worm castings to the hole. Watermelon is susceptible to disease, so I like to add the worm castings because it really helps add the beneficial bacteria and microbes, which help my plant be healthy. I'm going to dig my hole just a little bit deeper. I want the top of the pellet to be level with the top of the soil here. So that looks about right. And I'm going to go ahead and backfill here with the soil. And this little tiny watermelon plant, believe it or not, is going to climb up this trellis, and the watermelon are going to look so pretty hanging down. And what we're going to do is, as the watermelon plant grows, we're going to tie it up to the trellis and then support the little melons with pieces of old t-shirt, pantyhose, netting. We'll definitely come back and do a video on that as the melon plant grows. Now when you're growing watermelon in garden rows, you have to space them about 2 to 3 feet apart. But that's the beauty about growing watermelon vertically on a trellis, is you can plant them closer together. So I'm going to plant another one of my little transplants on the other side of this trellis. This is about a foot or so from the first plant. And it's going to give it enough space to grow, but still allowing it space to climb up the trellis. We added our compost. We're going to add our vermistera worm castings to the hole. Loosen up the soil just a little bit so those deep watermelon roots have plenty of nice loose soil to go down and get the water that it needs. Tip 4 to growing lots of watermelon is to be consistent with your watering and fertilizing. Now, watermelon is 90% water, so it really does need a good amount of water to grow nice, juicy watermelon. So what I'm watering with today is the Good Dirt plant food, which has a higher nitrogen level, which is really important for watermelon when you first plant it because you want all that nice green leafy growth. And I also am watering with the Vermistera worm tea, which again is really good for encouraging the beneficial bacteria and microbes to help watermelon be healthy and not get so much disease. So good high nitrogen fertilizer when you first plant it. Then as your watermelon starts to grow and flower, you want to give them a fertilizer that has less nitrogen in it, like the worm tea, because that way you're going to encourage less leafy growth and more fruiting. So we're going to give it a really nice dose of the water here. And you'll notice I'm watering at the base of the plant. Watermelon are really susceptible to different types of disease. And the more you can water at the base of your plant, let a little puddle form and then let it soak in and water again. The more you can keep water off of the leaves of the watermelon plant to help discourage fungal and bacterial diseases. And I like to water first thing in the morning so it has the water it needs during the heat of the day. And that way the water doesn't sit on the leaves overnight, but it'll evaporate once the sun hits it first thing in the morning. And what I'm going to do to really keep up on the fertilizing throughout the season is about once a month, I'm going to add a little handful of compost to the base of my plants and then water it in with some worm tea. So let me head over to this other side of the arch here and show you where I planted a little sugar baby watermelon about a week ago. Tip number 5 for growing lots of watermelon is to mulch your plants. Now here I have a little sugar baby watermelon that I planted about a week ago, and it is already growing. Got some brand new growth on it. It just is looking absolutely fabulous here at the base of this trellis. Now about a week or maybe 2 weeks ago when I planted it, it was just about the size of the plant that I just planted on the other side. So you can see it's already growing. And I do have a little cantaloupe also from the melon seed collection growing right next to it. Already shooting out tendrils, so looking really good. But it definitely, at the top of the soil you can see here is looking kind of dry, so I do need to add some mulch. Now what mulch is organic matter that you add to the top of the soil. It really helps conserve water and cut down on water evaporation. And since watermelon does need a lot of water, mulch is super, super important to really help keep that water in the soil and keep that water going down to the roots where the plants need it the most. So I'm going to spread about 2 inches of shredded leaf mulch on top of the soil. Now if you don't have shredded leaves, you can also use straw. You can see this cantaloupe is just about ready to be tied up to the trellis here, which we'll do that and show you how to do that in the next video. When you're growing watermelon vertically, it is important that you have a very sturdy arch. This one is very sturdy. Gardeners.com sent it to me to try out. I'm really excited about it. It's really pretty. It's going to add some nice dimension to the hill. And it's going to be so much fun to walk out here and see watermelons hanging down and just pick one and eat one right in the garden. Well, now what we're going to do is plant some seeds in a container. To grow lots of watermelon in containers, the type of container you choose and the type of variety of watermelon that you grow in containers is really important. Here I'm growing in a Smart Pots fabric 20-gallon container. And you have to have a very large container for watermelon because it does have deep roots and it's a large plant. And the fabric containers work very, very well because the plants don't get root bound in this aerated fabric. So that way the watermelon have more room to form the roots, and more roots mean more fruit. So we've got this container filled with Good Dirt potting mix. It's nice and light and fluffy. I actually reused this potting mix from last season and just added a few more inches of Good Dirt to add some more good nutrients to the soil here. And I do have a drip irrigation hose wound around the inside of this container. And what I'm going to do is plant some transplants and also plant some seeds. Now first off, I'm going to plant a honey rock cantaloupe. Now honey rock cantaloupe is in my melon seed collection. It's a nice small compact variety, not quite as big as a watermelon, but it grows perfectly in a container. And you can see I have a little trellis here, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So we're going to plant this transplant, which I started from seed indoors about a month ago, the same way we just planted in the garden beds I'm not going to add compost to the soil this time because I did add some fresh potting mix, which gives your watermelon plant some good organic nutrients. But I'll dig a hole, just pop it right in here, backfill it, and this plant already is growing beautifully and looks so, so healthy. And it's going to give me some beautiful, nice cantaloupe to eat as well. So I've got that plant right there, which again, we're going to tie up to the trellis as it grows. And let's grab ourselves some of the Sugar Baby watermelon seeds. Now the melon seed collection has 5 varieties. Has the Sugar Baby, which is a nice compact variety, the banana melon, which again is a cantaloupe, Charleston Gray, which is a nice big watermelon, which I planted in another area, and the Jubilee, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. But for now in the container, we're going to plant the Sugar Baby, 8 to 10 pounds. Nice compact size, perfect for a container. And we're going to plant seeds at the base of the trellis here, right where the supports are, just so I can tie the vines up to the supports as it grows. So I'm going to drop 1 or 2 seeds right next to each little support. And then just put a little handful of soil over it. So easy to plant watermelon seeds. You want to cover them with 1 inch or so of soil, and we'll drop seeds all around the container. So you can see I'm putting 2 seeds in each little hole. That way if one doesn't germinate, the other one will. Give yourself plenty of insurance for lots of good little seedlings. And I'm planting the seeds about 6 to 8 inches apart. Now if both seedlings germinate in all the little spots I'm putting them, what I will do is just clip one off at the base of the soil, and that way it leaves room for the other seedlings. So I've got 3 spots where I'm planting Sugar Babies. I've got my cantaloupe, and I'm also going to put another little cantaloupe seedling right in the middle. It'll make for a nice full planter. And we can always transplant one of these a little bit later if it looks like this container is going to get a little bit too crowded. So I'm just going to put it right in the middle, right next to my drip irrigation hose, so it gets plenty of moisture. Backfill. We're going to go ahead and water, because remember, watermelon needs very consistent watering and fertilizing. We've got the Good Dirt plant food in here and the Vermistera worm tea. Now when you're growing watermelon in containers, you're going to have to water a lot more frequently than you would water in your garden beds, because containers dry out a lot quicker. So you want to come out and check your containers daily, especially during hot weather, and make sure that you're watering them to where the soil is nice and moist and runs out the bottom of the container. And we're going to put this container in full sun, because watermelon need at least 8 hours of sun a day in order to grow and produce the most for you. And you'll also want to choose a spot in your garden bed that's in full sun as well. I'm going to go ahead and put some shredded leaf mulch on the top. You can mulch in containers, you can mulch in garden beds. It's always good to mulch your plants to really help conserve that water. As long as your temperatures are between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to see your little seedlings sprout within about 5 to 7 days. That's going to be a ton of fun. Now, remember how I mentioned you need a nice sturdy trellis for growing watermelon? Well, here's a little DIY option. This is 2 large size, very sturdy tomato cages. You got one on the bottom, and then I cut the little tongs off of the top here and then turned it upside down and attached it with little cable ties. So it makes a really quick, sturdy, inexpensive trellis that you can use for your containers for growing watermelon. And it's about probably 6.5 feet tall, which should be a good height for a growing cantaloupe and Sugar Baby watermelon plants. Now I said I'd show you my Jubilee watermelon plant, which actually needs some mulch added to it. So this I'm not growing vertically. I don't have a ton of space, so I just tucked it in here in the corner of this little planter. And what I'm going to do is let it sprawl all around the fountain here. This is a very large size watermelon, 25 to 30 pounds. So I'm hoping I have enough space here. It's kind of an experiment. So make sure you subscribe and follow along with this watermelon series to see how the Jubilee watermelon grows also. I'm looking forward to growing lots of watermelon with you this summer. There's nothing more refreshing on a hot summer day than a juicy, ripe watermelon that you grew yourself right in your own backyard. Grab yourself one of my melon seed collections over at CaliKimGardenandHome.com. Get yourself some seeds planted and let me know if you're going to be growing watermelon vertically, in ground, or in containers with me this summer. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.